La mujer apache compró al ganadero cautivo, esa noche le dijo, Serás mi esposo. The sun was just beginning to rise over the wide plains. The soft golden light touched the tips of the grass, making it shimmer like tiny pieces of gold. John, a hardworking rancher, was already on his horse, checking his herd of cattle. He had been traveling for days, moving his cattle to a new pasture. The land was beautiful, with rolling hills and tall trees, but John could not help feeling a little uneasy. He had heard stories from travelers about tribes living in these lands, and though he did not mean any harm, he knew he must be careful. John rode slowly, making sure no animal was left behind. He whistled softly, trying to keep his cattle calm. The wind carried the smell of fresh grass and earth, and the sound of birds singing in the distance gave a peaceful feeling. For a moment, John felt that all was right in the world, but the peaceful morning would soon change. As John checked a small group of cows grazing near a stream, he noticed movement in the trees. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but then he saw figures moving carefully among the branches. His heart began to beat faster. He knew these were not ordinary travelers. Before he could react, the figures emerged from the forest. They were a group of Apache people. They moved quickly and silently, surrounding the area. John felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The leader of the group stepped forward. She was a woman, strong and confident, with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Her hair was dark, and her presence was commanding. John had never met her before, but he could tell she was someone important in her tribe. She studied him quietly, as if trying to understand who he was and why he was there. John tried to explain himself, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm, but he realized that words would not matter much here. The woman spoke to her people, and they nodded. She walked toward John, calm and sure. There was a strange authority in the way she moved. John felt both fear and curiosity. She looked at him carefully, her eyes scanning his face, his clothes, and the small tools he carried. She seemed to be making a decision, one that would change John's life forever. The woman signaled for John to follow her. He did not resist. He felt that fighting would not help, and he did not want to cause trouble. Slowly, he rode his horse after her, leaving his herd behind. He noticed that the woman's people were careful not to scare the animals, and they moved with respect for the land. John began to wonder about their way of life, so different from his own. As they walked together through the forest, the woman spoke softly, explaining that he would be taken to the tribe's camp. John tried to understand her words. He realized that she was not cruel. She was simply following the rules of her people. He also noticed that the way she spoke showed intelligence and kindness. There was no anger in her voice, only calm authority. The journey to the camp was quiet, except for the sounds of nature. Birds sang, leaves rustled in the wind, and the horses' hooves made soft thuds on the ground. John could not help but notice how carefully the woman treated the animals. She moved with a grace that made him admire her strength. He also felt a strange connection, as if she could sense his thoughts. Finally, they arrived at the camp. It was a large area surrounded by trees, with several tents made of animal skins. Smoke rose from small fires, and people were moving about, preparing food and caring for their families. John felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. Everything was so different from his life on the ranch. He noticed children playing, elders speaking to one another, and people sharing tasks together. The camp seemed alive and full of energy. The woman led John to the center of the camp. She spoke to her people, and they nodded in understanding. Then she turned to John. Her eyes looked directly into his, and John felt as if she could see into his very soul. He tried to speak, but he could not find the words. He felt small and unsure, yet also curious about the life that awaited him. That night the camp was quiet except for the soft crackle of the fires. John sat near the edge, watching the people around him. He realized that they were not so different from him in many ways. They laughed, they cared for each other, and they worked hard to survive in a difficult land. But he also knew that he was in a new world, one where he would have to learn many things quickly. The woman approached him again. She spoke softly, in words that he could understand. She said that she had chosen him according to her customs and that he would live among them. John felt a mix of emotions, fear, confusion, and something he could not name. He had never expected his life to take such a turn. As the night grew darker, John watched the stars above. The sky was vast and filled with shining lights. He thought of his family, his ranch, and the life he had known. But now, he realized that he must adapt to survive and to understand this new world. The woman sat near him, quietly observing. There was no threat in her presence, only a strong and steady energy that made John feel both respect and awe. He thought about the words she had said, "You will live with us." They were simple words, but they carried so much meaning. John understood that his life had changed forever. He was no longer alone in the world of the plains. He was now part of a community, one that lived by its own rules and traditions. That night, as the camp settled into sleep, John could not stop thinking about the woman who had chosen him. Her strength, intelligence, and calm authority stayed in his mind. He realized that the fear he had felt earlier was slowly being replaced by curiosity. Who was this woman, and what would his life become with her? By the time the first light of dawn appeared, John had made a silent promise to himself. He would do his best to understand this new life, to respect the people who had taken him in, and to learn from the woman who had such a strong presence. He did not yet know if he would feel at home, but he knew that the journey had begun. The woman watched him quietly as the morning began. She understood his thoughts without words. In her eyes, he saw not cruelty or anger, but a sense of responsibility and care. She was not just a leader. She was someone who would shape his understanding of life in ways he could not yet imagine. John's first night in the camp ended with a mix of emotions, fear, wonder, and a strange hope. He realized that this was the beginning of a story that would change him forever. The plains, the tribe, and the woman who had chosen him were now part of his life, and he could not turn back. As he drifted into sleep, he thought about the days ahead. He did not know what challenges he would face or how he would adapt, but he felt a quiet determination growing inside him. He knew that survival would require courage, patience, and respect for the people who had welcomed him, even if it was in an unusual way. And somewhere in the shadows, the woman watched him sleep. She knew that the coming days would test both of them, but she also believed that there was a potential for understanding and trust. The story of the rancher and the Apache woman had just begun, and the plains were waiting to witness it unfold. The morning light filled the camp with warmth. Birds sang and life continued as usual. But for John, the quiet night had left a lasting impression. He felt that he had stepped into a world full of mystery, learning, and unexpected bonds. He was no longer just a rancher traveling through the plains. He was part of a story that would change him forever, guided by a woman whose words and actions would shape the course of his life. The morning sun rose over the camp, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. John woke early, feeling the cool air of the plains against his face. He could hear the quiet movements of the tribe as they began their day. Children laughed as they ran around, while elders spoke softly, passing down lessons and stories. The smell of cooking fires drifted through the air, mixing with the fresh scent of grass and earth. John slowly got up, stretching his stiff muscles from the night spent on the ground. He realized that he was now part of a world completely different from the one he had known. The camp, the people, and especially the woman who had chosen him made him feel both curious and nervous. He did not know exactly what his role would be, but he sensed that he must learn quickly to live among them. The woman approached him again. She was calm and confident, moving with a quiet grace. Her eyes met his, and for a moment there was no need for words. John could feel that she expected him to follow her and learn. She gestured toward a small area near the fire where a few people were preparing breakfast. John followed, realizing that his first lessons would begin here. She began showing him simple tasks, carrying water from a nearby stream, helping to prepare food, and observing the ways the tribe worked together. John noticed how each person had a role and how everyone helped one another. The woman watched him closely, correcting him when he made mistakes, but always with patience. He realized that she was teaching him not just tasks, but respect for the way of life she valued. As the day went on, John began to feel the rhythm of the camp. The people moved with purpose, but there was also laughter and care. He helped a young boy gather firewood and carried baskets of vegetables for an elderly woman. Though his muscles ached, he found satisfaction in being useful. The woman stood nearby, observing, occasionally giving instructions. John began to understand that she was not just strong in body, but in her mind and spirit. During a quiet moment, John asked her why she had chosen him. She looked at him with thoughtful eyes. "In our ways," she said, "we choose carefully. You will live with us and you will learn." Life is not just about fear or danger. It is about understanding, respect, and courage. John listened carefully. He could feel that her words were not only instructions but a guide to living in this new world. That evening, the camp gathered around the fire. The sky was full of stars, and the light of the fire danced on everyone's faces. Stories were told, some about the past, some about the lessons of life, and some about the land itself. John listened with fascination. He realized that he was witnessing a culture rich with history, wisdom, and community. The woman sat beside him, occasionally explaining details he did not understand. He felt a growing sense of admiration for her and for the people around him. As days passed, John began to adapt. He learned how to ride horses like the tribe members, how to care for the animals, and how to move quietly through the land. The woman taught him not with harshness but with guidance and encouragement. Sometimes she tested him, asking him to do tasks that seemed difficult, but each challenge made him stronger and more confident. He could feel himself changing, not just learning skills, but also understanding the ways of a community that valued courage, respect, and care for one another. One afternoon, John was asked to help with a small ceremony. The tribe gathered in a circle, and he watched as they performed a dance that honored the land and their ancestors. At first, he felt out of place, unsure of what to do. But the woman took his hand gently, guiding him through the motions. Her patience gave him courage, and soon he was moving with the rhythm, feeling part of something greater than himself. The warmth of the fire, the music, and the connection to the people filled him with a strange but wonderful feeling of belonging. As weeks turned into months, John's bond with the woman grew stronger. He began to understand her not just as a leader, but as a person with hopes, dreams, and care for her people. She taught him about the plants that healed, the animals that provided, and the stars that guided their paths at night. John marveled at her knowledge and her connection to the land. He realized that she was shaping him into someone who could respect and protect this way of life. At the same time, John could not forget his old life. Sometimes he would think about his family, his ranch, and the familiar routines of his past. But as he looked at the camp, the people, and especially the woman, he began to see that life could be meaningful in ways he had never imagined. He started to feel gratitude for the lessons he was learning, even though they came from unexpected circumstances. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of purple and the first stars appeared, the woman spoke to him quietly. "You have learned much, John," she said, "but there is still more to understand. Life is about respect for the land, for the people, and for yourself. You will face challenges, but you will also find strength you did not know you had." John listened, feeling the weight and truth of her words. He understood that his journey was only beginning and that trust and patience would guide him. The days were not always easy. Sometimes he struggled with tasks or made mistakes that embarrassed him in front of the tribe. But the woman never scolded him harshly. Instead, she showed him the correct way, explaining the reasons behind each action. Slowly, John began to see that her approach was not just about teaching skills, but about shaping character. He admired her strength, wisdom, and fairness more than he could say. Through all these lessons, John felt a connection growing between him and the woman. He did not yet fully understand it, whether it was respect, friendship, or something deeper, but he knew that her presence was important in his life. She was patient, strong, and confident, and he found himself wanting to live up to her expectations. At the same time, he remained cautious, knowing that he must fully understand her ways before taking any step that might disrespect her or her people. One morning, John woke to find the woman waiting for him by the edge of the camp. She handed him a small bundle of herbs and said, "These will help you sleep and heal. Take care of them as you would care for life itself." John accepted the gift with gratitude. He realized that her lessons were not just about survival, but about understanding life, respect, and balance. Every action, every word carried meaning, and he began to see the depth of her teachings. By now, John had started to feel a part of the tribe. The people no longer looked at him with suspicion. They smiled, spoke to him, and included him in their activities. The children were no longer shy, and even the elders greeted him with nods of acknowledgement. John felt a sense of belonging that he had never known before. He knew he still had much to learn, but he was beginning to feel at home in this new world. One night, as the fire burned low and the stars glittered overhead, the woman spoke to him in a calm, steady voice. "John," she said, "you have come far in understanding our ways. But more than skills, you must understand respect and trust. Only then will you truly be part of this life." John nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He realized that the lessons he was learning were not just about living in the camp, but about becoming a better, stronger, and wiser person. In the weeks that followed, John continued to grow. He learned how to ride with confidence, care for the animals, and move through the land quietly and carefully. He also learned to observe, listen, and understand the people around him. The woman continued to guide him, correcting him gently, praising his successes, and challenging him to grow. John realized that life in the camp was full of lessons, both large and small, and that every day brought new experiences and challenges. The bond between John and the woman grew deeper, built on respect, understanding, and patience. He admired her wisdom, her courage, and the way she led her people with care and strength. She, in turn, recognized his effort, his willingness to learn, and his growing connection to the tribe. They began to communicate not only with words, but with gestures, understanding, and shared experiences. A silent trust was forming between them, a connection that neither could fully explain but both could feel. John's life was changing in ways he had never imagined. He had come as a stranger, uncertain and afraid, but he was slowly becoming part of something greater than himself. The woman's guidance, the tribe's acceptance, and the beauty of the land had opened his eyes to a life full of lessons, challenges, and unexpected joys. He understood that he would never forget this time, and that his experiences would shape him forever. As the sun set on another day in the camp, John sat near the fire, thinking of the journey that had brought him here. He realized that his life had been transformed not by chance, but by the courage and wisdom of a woman who had seen something in him worth guiding. He understood that the path ahead would not always be easy, but with patience, respect, and trust, he could learn, grow, and find a place in this new world. And as he looked at her, standing tall and confident by the fire, he felt a quiet promise forming in his heart. A promise to learn, to respect, and to become someone worthy of the trust she had placed in him. The story of the rancher and the Apache woman was just beginning, and John knew that the days ahead would teach him more than he had ever imagined. John had now been living in the Apache camp for several months. The days were long, filled with lessons, work, and quiet moments of observation. The land around the camp was alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves in the wind, the distant calls of animals, and the laughter of children playing near the streams. John had grown stronger and more confident in his tasks, but deep inside, he still felt a mix of uncertainty and curiosity about the life he had been drawn into. The woman who had chosen him remained a constant presence in his life. She was patient yet firm, guiding him through each new challenge. John had come to admire her strength and wisdom, but he also felt something new, an emotional connection he could not easily describe. There were moments when their eyes met and held, and he felt a strange warmth, a sense of being understood without words. Yet, he reminded himself to stay cautious. He was still learning, and he did not want to make any mistakes that could offend or hurt her trust. One morning, as the sun rose over the plains, John was asked to help herd the horses. He mounted his horse and followed the woman and a few other tribe members into the open fields. The horses moved gracefully, their hooves kicking up dust as they ran. The woman rode beside him, giving instructions quietly. John realized that she was teaching him more than just how to manage the animals. She was teaching him to observe, to think ahead, and to act with confidence. During a break, the woman spoke to John. "You have learned much," she said, her voice calm but strong. "But the land will teach you more than words ever can. You must watch, listen, and understand. Only then will you truly belong." John listened carefully, taking in every word. He understood that respect for the land and the people was at the heart of her teachings. It was not just about survival, it was about becoming part of something larger than himself. That evening, John helped prepare dinner for the tribe. He carried water, chopped vegetables, and learned how to cook over an open fire. The children gathered around him, curious and playful. At first he felt awkward, unsure how to interact with them. But the woman encouraged him gently, showing him how to engage with kindness and patience. Slowly, John began to feel more comfortable, realizing that the bond between him and the tribe was growing stronger. As the days passed, John began to face challenges he had not expected. He had moments of doubt, wondering if he could truly adapt to this life. There were times when he felt homesick, thinking of his family and the ranch he had left behind. But each time, the woman was there to guide him. She did not scold or push him harshly. Instead, she reminded him that learning was a journey, not a race. John realized that her strength was not only in her actions, but also in her ability to inspire trust and courage in others. One afternoon, John was asked to help with a special ceremony. The tribe gathered in a circle, singing songs and performing dances that had been passed down through generations. At first, John felt out of place, unsure of what to do. The woman took his hand and guided him, showing him the steps and the meaning behind each movement. John felt a deep sense of respect and awe. He realized that this was more than a ritual. It was a connection to the ancestors, to the land, and to the spirit of the tribe. That night, as the fire burned low and the stars filled the sky, John sat quietly, reflecting on the day. He felt a growing admiration for the woman who had chosen him. Her patience, intelligence, and calm authority had taught him more than he could have imagined. But he also began to feel something deeper, a curiosity about the woman herself, about her life, her thoughts, and her dreams. He realized that his feelings were changing. What had begun as fear and uncertainty was slowly becoming respect, and perhaps something more. John noticed small things about her, the way she laughed softly at the children's games, the care with which she prepared meals, the quiet strength in her eyes. He found himself thinking about her when he was alone, wondering what she was doing and hoping she was safe. He did not yet understand these emotions fully, but he knew they were important. They made him feel alive and connected in a way he had never experienced before. The woman also seemed to notice the change in him. She watched him carefully, observing how he approached his tasks and how he interacted with the tribe. One evening she spoke to him privately. "You are learning well," she said, "but your heart must also learn. Life is not just about actions, it is about understanding, feeling, and respecting. You cannot rush this. Trust must grow slowly, like a tree planted in the earth." John listened intently, realizing the depth of her words. He understood that their connection was not something to be forced, it was something to be nurtured with care. As weeks turned into months, John faced his first real test of courage. A young member of the tribe had wandered too far while exploring the woods. John and the woman were sent to find him. They rode through the dense forest, moving quietly but quickly. John felt his heart pounding, aware of the responsibility he carried. He had never felt such urgency, but he also felt a strange calm in the woman's presence. Her confidence and knowledge guided him, and he realized that he could trust her completely. They found the child near a stream, unharmed but frightened. John approached slowly, speaking softly, while the woman reassured the child with gentle words. The relief was overwhelming. John realized that he had been tested, not just his skill, but his ability to remain calm, to act with care, and to support others in a time of need. The woman looked at him with a quiet smile, and John felt a surge of pride and connection. He understood that he was growing, not just as a worker, but as a member of the tribe. That evening, back at the camp, the woman spoke to John about trust. "You acted with courage and patience," she said. "That is what life asks of us, not only to survive, but to care for one another. You are becoming part of this world, John, but remember, respect and understanding must always guide your actions." John nodded, realizing that her teachings were shaping him in ways he had never anticipated. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just for himself, but for the people and the land around him. John also began to understand the subtleties of life in the camp. He learned how to read the sky to predict weather, how to track animals, and how to move quietly through the forests without disturbing the natural world. The woman taught him these skills with patience, often guiding him with small hints rather than direct instructions. John realized that her way of teaching was not just about knowledge, it was about intuition, observation, and understanding the rhythm of life. Through all these experiences, the bond between John and the woman grew stronger. They began to communicate not only with words, but with gestures, glances, and shared experiences. John found himself feeling more confident, more capable, and more connected to the tribe. He also felt something deeper, a sense of trust, admiration, and perhaps the beginnings of affection. He did not yet understand it fully, but he knew that the woman had become an important part of his life in ways he could not ignore. One quiet evening, John and the woman sat by the fire, watching the stars. The camp was calm, and the soft sounds of night filled the air. The woman spoke softly, sharing stories of her childhood and the lessons she had learned from her elders. John listened, fascinated. He realized that every word carried wisdom, and that her experiences had shaped her into the strong, patient, and understanding person she was today. He felt honored to be learning from her, and grateful for her guidance. John also began to reflect on his own growth. He remembered the fear he had felt when first captured, the uncertainty of living in a world so different from his own. Now, he could see how much he had learned, not only about survival, but about respect, patience, and connection. He realized that the woman had helped him become more than just a rancher. She had helped him become a man who could understand and appreciate life in its many forms. As the night deepened, John felt a quiet peace. He knew that challenges would continue, and that life in the camp would not always be easy. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, and that the woman who had chosen him would guide him with wisdom and care. He felt a sense of hope and anticipation for the days ahead, knowing that his journey was far from over, but that he was ready to face it with courage and respect. The bond between John and the woman had grown slowly, built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. He admired her strength, wisdom, and patience, and he felt a quiet longing to honor the trust she had placed in him. He realized that his life had changed forever, and that he could never return to the person he had been before. The lessons, the experiences, and the connection with the woman had shaped him into someone new, a man who could live with courage, respect, and a growing sense of belonging. And as the fire burned low and the stars twinkled above, John understood that his journey was only beginning. The woman had shown him the path, but he would have to walk it with patience, respect, and a willingness to learn. The story of the rancher and the Apache woman was unfolding, and John knew that the days ahead would bring new lessons, challenges, and perhaps even a deeper understanding of the bond that was forming between them. Months had passed since John had arrived at the Apache camp. He had grown stronger, more confident, and more skilled in the ways of the tribe. He had learned to ride horses gracefully, to care for animals, to track wildlife, and to move quietly through the forests. But despite all these lessons, John still faced challenges he could not anticipate, the lessons of the heart and of trust. The woman who had chosen him continued to be a guiding presence in his life. She was patient, wise, and steady, teaching him not only practical skills but also the deeper lessons of life, respect, courage, and understanding. John admired her more with each passing day, yet he could not ignore the feelings that were growing inside him. There were moments when he looked at her and felt a mix of awe, curiosity, and something he did not fully understand. One morning, the woman asked John to help with a task that required careful observation. They were to collect certain plants from the forest, plants used for food, medicine, and ceremony. John followed her closely, paying attention to her instructions. She taught him not only how to identify the plants but also how to respect them, taking only what was needed and leaving the rest untouched. As they moved together, John felt a quiet connection forming between them, a sense of shared purpose that went beyond words. As they worked, John noticed how the woman interacted with the land. She moved with care, her eyes scanning every detail, her hands gentle yet precise. He realized that her strength was not just in her knowledge, but in her deep understanding of life itself. He tried to mirror her actions, hoping to learn not only the skills but also the mindset she embodied. It was hard work, but John felt a sense of pride in his progress and a growing admiration for her wisdom. That evening, back at the camp, John reflected on his feelings. He had come to the tribe uncertain, fearful, and unprepared. Now he felt capable and confident in many ways, yet he also realized that his journey was far from over. The challenges he faced now were not only about skill or survival, they were about trust, understanding, and the subtle lessons of the heart. The woman had shown him kindness, guidance, and patience, but he knew that earning her trust fully required more than actions. It required sincerity, courage, and respect. As the days continued, John found himself thinking about the woman more often. He noticed small details, the way her eyes softened when she spoke to children, the care she took in preparing meals, the quiet confidence in her movements. He realized that he was not only learning from her, but also developing a deep appreciation and respect for who she was. His feelings were growing in ways he had never expected, and he wondered if she might sense them too. One afternoon, a situation arose that tested John's patience and judgment. A young member of the tribe had accidentally wandered near a dangerous part of the land, a cliffside known for loose rocks. John was asked to guide the child safely back. He felt a surge of responsibility, knowing that the safety of the child rested on his actions. The woman accompanied him, providing calm guidance and reassurance. John realized that this task was not only about skill, it was about composure, courage, and trust. As they navigated the cliffside, John felt the tension in the air. One wrong step could be dangerous. He kept his voice steady, giving clear instructions to the child while following the woman's guidance. Her presence was reassuring, and John felt his confidence growing as he learned to trust his instincts and the lessons she had taught him. When they finally reached safe ground, John felt a sense of relief and pride. The woman smiled quietly at him, a gesture that spoke volumes about her approval and trust. That night, the camp gathered around the fire. John could see the sense of community and respect in the way the tribe interacted. The woman sat beside him, speaking softly about the day's lessons. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she said, "but the ability to act wisely despite it. You showed courage today, John, and it will guide you in all that you do." John listened, understanding the depth of her words. He realized that true strength came not from physical ability alone, but from character, patience, and respect for life. Over the following weeks, John continued to face challenges that tested him emotionally and mentally. He had moments of doubt, wondering if he could fully belong in this new world. But each challenge was a chance to grow, and the woman's guidance was always there to help him navigate the uncertainties. She never pushed him harshly. She simply offered wisdom, observation, and encouragement, allowing him to learn through experience. John began to notice the bond between them growing stronger. They shared moments of quiet understanding, a glance, a smile, a gesture that conveyed trust and mutual respect. He realized that their connection was built on more than necessity. It was built on shared experiences, lessons learned together, and a deepening sense of trust. He felt a growing sense of comfort and admiration, and he began to wonder if the woman felt the same way. One evening, after a long day of work, the woman asked John to sit with her outside the camp. The sky was painted with soft colors of sunset, and the air was calm. She spoke about life, about the tribe, and about the importance of understanding others. Her words were gentle but powerful, teaching John lessons about patience, empathy, and the ways in which trust could grow. John listened intently, feeling a deep respect for her wisdom and insight. As they talked, John felt a new awareness of his own feelings. He realized that his admiration for her had grown into something deeper, a sense of caring and connection he had not experienced before. He wondered if it was too soon to express these feelings, or if they should remain silent until trust and understanding had grown even more. The woman's calm presence reassured him, making him feel safe in exploring these new emotions. Days turned into weeks, and John continued to learn, grow, and observe the rhythms of life in the camp. He noticed how the woman interacted with the tribe, always fair, patient, and strong. He began to understand the subtle ways she taught, not just with words but through example. Her leadership was rooted in care, respect, and wisdom, and John felt honored to witness and learn from it. One afternoon, the tribe prepared for a seasonal celebration, honoring the land and the spirits that guided them. John was invited to help with preparations. He worked alongside the woman, arranging decorations, preparing food, and assisting others. The experience was both challenging and joyful. He realized that the celebration was more than an event. It was a reflection of the tribe's values, their unity, and their connection to life itself. The woman's presence was central, guiding, encouraging, and inspiring. As the celebration began, John felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. He moved among the people, helping, observing, and learning. He felt the warmth of community and the depth of tradition. And when he looked at the woman, standing proudly among her people, he felt a surge of admiration, respect, and a quiet affection that made his heart beat faster. That night, after the celebration, John and the woman sat quietly by a small fire. The stars sparkled above, and the soft sounds of the camp filled the night. She spoke gently about life, about choices, and about the importance of trust and understanding. John listened, feeling the depth of her wisdom and the care in her voice. He realized that he had grown in ways he had never imagined, not just in skill, but in heart and mind. As the night deepened, John reflected on how far he had come. He had entered the camp uncertain and afraid, unsure of what his future held. Now he felt capable, confident, and connected, not only to the tribe but to the woman who had guided him. He understood that life was about learning, patience, and respect. And he knew that his feelings for the woman had grown into something meaningful, a bond built on trust, admiration, and shared experiences. John also realized that the path ahead would not always be easy. Life in the camp was full of challenges, and he would continue to face tests of courage, patience, and understanding. But with the woman's guidance and the support of the tribe, he felt ready to face whatever came. He understood that his journey was not just about survival, it was about growth, respect, and the development of character. As the fire burned low, John looked at the woman beside him. He felt a quiet sense of gratitude, admiration, and trust. He knew that their bond was growing stronger, built on shared lessons, experiences, and respect. He also realized that their connection was something special, a relationship that could grow over time into something meaningful and lasting. The night passed quietly, with the stars shining above and the sounds of the camp gently fading into sleep. John lay down, thinking of the journey that had brought him here and the lessons he had learned. He felt a sense of hope, anticipation, and readiness for the days to come. The woman had taught him much, not only about life in the tribe but about trust, patience, and the heart. And as he drifted into sleep, John knew that his story was still unfolding. The bond with the woman was growing, the lessons of life were continuing, and the path ahead held challenges, discoveries, and perhaps a deeper connection that neither of them had yet fully understood. Time had passed, and John had become an integral part of the Apache camp. The stranger who had arrived uncertain and fearful was now a man who understood the land, the people, and the wisdom that guided them. Each day had brought lessons, challenges, and opportunities to grow, and John had embraced them all. He had learned not only the skills of survival but also the deeper lessons of respect, patience, and trust. The woman who had chosen him was always near, guiding, observing, and teaching. Over the months, their bond had grown stronger. John had learned to read her expressions, understand her subtle gestures, and anticipate her instructions. Their connection was no longer limited to practical matters. It had become personal, emotional, and deeply meaningful. John admired her wisdom, strength, and kindness, and he began to feel that he could trust her with his heart. One morning, John woke early to help with daily chores. The air was crisp, and the sky was painted with shades of gold as the sun rose. He carried water, prepared the fire, and tended to the animals, feeling a sense of purpose and belonging. The woman approached him quietly, her presence calm but powerful. She spoke softly, "Today will be important. You have learned much, John. But there is still a path for your heart to follow." John looked at her, feeling a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. The tribe was preparing for a gathering, a celebration to honor the land, the spirits, and the bonds that held them together. John worked alongside the woman, arranging the area, preparing food, and ensuring that everything was in order. The children laughed and played, elders gave guidance, and the atmosphere was alive with joy and connection. John felt a sense of pride, knowing that he had contributed to this moment and that he was fully part of the tribe. As the day progressed, John noticed how the woman moved through the crowd, her presence commanding respect while also offering care. She smiled at the children, spoke kindly to the elders, and gave instructions with confidence. John admired her more than ever. He realized that she was not just a teacher or guide, she was a leader, a protector, and a symbol of the values that made the tribe strong. He felt grateful for her guidance and inspired to follow her example. During a quiet moment, the woman took John aside. She led him to a small clearing near the edge of the camp, away from the bustle. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft patterns on the ground. She turned to him and spoke with a calm, steady voice. "John," she said, "you have learned to respect the land, the people, and yourself. You have shown patience, courage, and understanding. But now it is time for your heart to speak." John felt a rush of emotions, anticipation, nervousness, and a deep sense of connection. He realized that he had been waiting for this moment, though he had not known it. Over the months, he had grown to care for her deeply. Her guidance, her patience, and her wisdom had shaped him into someone he could be proud of. And now, standing before her in the quiet clearing, he felt ready to show his gratitude, respect, and affection. He took a deep breath and spoke. I respect you, and I am grateful for all you have taught me. You have changed my life, and I want to be part of your world fully and sincerely." The woman looked at him, her eyes softening. She stepped closer, her presence both gentle and strong. "John," she said, "you have learned the ways of our people, and you have grown in heart and spirit. Trust, respect, and understanding are the foundation of all relationships. You have shown these qualities, and you are ready." She paused, giving him a chance to absorb her words. John felt a mixture of relief, joy, and awe. He understood that this was not just about love, it was about trust, commitment, and mutual respect. Slowly, she reached out and placed her hand over his. It was a simple gesture, but it carried immense meaning. John felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of connection that went beyond words. He realized that their bond had grown naturally, through shared experiences, challenges, and understanding. This was not a rushed decision. It was the result of months of learning, growing, and building trust. The woman spoke again, her voice calm and steady. "You will be part of our family now, John, not only in work and duty but in life and heart. You will learn more, grow more, and share in the responsibilities and joys of our people, and you will stand beside me as a partner, trusted and respected." John felt a profound sense of honor and happiness. He knew that he had found a place where he truly belonged, with people who respected him, and a woman who had guided and inspired him. The days that followed were filled with preparation and celebration. The tribe welcomed John fully, recognizing his contributions, his courage, and his growth. He worked alongside the woman, learning more about the land, the animals, and the traditions. But now there was also a new dimension to his life, a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. He felt a sense of purpose that went beyond survival or skill. He was part of something greater than himself. One evening, as the sun set and the camp settled into quiet, the woman and John sat together outside their small dwelling. The sky was painted with hues of red and orange, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of nature. She spoke softly about the future, about the importance of continuing to learn, to care, and to support one another. John listened attentively, feeling a sense of peace and connection he had never known before. He realized that the woman had not only taught him practical skills, but had also guided him in matters of the heart, showing him the importance of patience, trust, and understanding. Their bond was now complete, built on shared experiences, respect, and a deep emotional connection. John felt ready to embrace his life fully, with the tribe and with the woman who had changed his world. The next morning, the tribe held a ceremony to honor John's journey. Elders spoke of his courage, patience, and growth. Children presented gifts of flowers and small tokens, while other members of the tribe nodded with approval and warmth. John felt a deep sense of belonging, knowing that he was not just a visitor or learner anymore. He was a trusted member of the tribe, respected and valued. The woman stood beside him during the ceremony, her presence steady and reassuring. She looked at him with pride and care, and John felt a surge of gratitude and admiration. He realized that the bond they shared was now recognized by the tribe, not only as a partnership, but as a symbol of trust, respect, and love. He felt honored, humbled, and joyful all at once. After the ceremony, John and the woman walked together through the camp. They spoke quietly about the day, about lessons learned, and about the future. John realized that their partnership was built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared purpose. He felt confident that together, they could face challenges, celebrate successes, and continue to grow as individuals and as partners. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the plains, John felt a profound sense of peace. He had come to the tribe as a stranger, uncertain and afraid. Now he was a trusted member, respected and valued. He had learned skills, gained knowledge, and most importantly, built a bond with a woman whose wisdom, patience, and care had changed his life forever. That night, as the camp settled into quiet, John and the woman sat together under the stars. They spoke softly, shared laughter, and reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. John realized that life in the tribe was not just about survival, it was about connection, respect, and growth. And he knew that his bond with the woman would continue to guide him, inspire him, and bring him joy for the rest of his life. In the days that followed, John embraced his life fully. He continued to learn from the woman and the tribe, building on the lessons of courage, patience, and respect. He worked, celebrated, and shared in the joys and responsibilities of the community. And through it all, the bond with the woman remained central, strong, trusting, and filled with care. John understood that his journey had been remarkable. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and challenges, but he had grown stronger, wiser, and more connected. He had learned the value of patience, trust, and respect. He had found a place where he belonged, among people who valued him, and a woman who had guided him with wisdom and care. As the sun rose over the camp each day, John felt a sense of gratitude. He knew that life would continue to bring lessons and challenges, but he also knew that he was ready to face them with courage and understanding. And as he looked at the woman who had changed his life, he felt a sense of joy, admiration, and deep connection that words could not fully capture. The story of the rancher and the Apache woman had reached a meaningful conclusion, not as an end, but as a beginning of a life filled with respect, partnership, and shared purpose. John had found his place, his community, and his heart, and he knew that the journey ahead, though full of challenges, would be guided by trust, wisdom, and love. And under the wide, open sky, surrounded by the land, the people, and the bond he had formed, John felt at home, for the first time truly at home.